Hi everybody, it is Heather with GetFitGoFigure.com. Tonight it will just be me talking about keto diets, and Jenny Baker will not be joining us tonight. So I'm going to jump right in. I have a list of questions that I will try to answer, and then I will try and also keep up with the questions that people might ask as we go through. So if for some reason I don't answer it through the whole thing, because I actually have kind of a full line of information here, one based on questions and two based on things that I know people do wrong or usually ask me anyway over the years. So let me pull up this little video so I can see myself on my computer and keep up with some of these questions, hopefully. I don't even know where to find it on my computer. I don't know why it has to be so hard. Okay, anyway, here we go. So let's do this. Okay, we're gonna talk about keto diets, and they've been around for a long time. People have done them a lot. People have done them for short term, long term. They've tried it and hated it. They tried it and loved it. They've run the whole gamut, and a lot of times I feel like people are just doing it wrong or using it inappropriately, especially when they're trying to be really active or lifting to build or whatever. So we're going to cover a lot of things, and we're going to start from the ground up here. So what is a keto diet? A ketogenic diet. What that means basically is your body is fueled off of fat to create ketones in your system. So your diet would look like very low carb, high fat, moderate protein, and it is a survival mechanism because your brain uses glucose, so carbohydrates, or when carbohydrates are not available, your body will eventually start producing ketones from fat so that your brain can use ketones. So it's a survival mechanism to keep your brain functioning, because if you didn't have carbs, your brain would just like die. So ketones are that backup system. A lot of people have had great success with fat loss on it. And what I found over the years is I use it in certain circumstances. I don't use it all the time, just willy-nilly. And I'll tell you what circumstances those usually are, why I would use it, and who it's really good for. So first let's go through, after what it is now here, I want to go through how you set it up. I want to go through Keto Food List. I want to go through how you prepare for the Keto Flu, and then I want to talk about when and how you would use this type of diet. So as far as setting up a keto diet, if you are going to not count macronutrients, if you're not going to track protein, carbs, and fat, you're basically eating a lot of fat like nuts, nut butters, oils, avocado. If dairy sits well with you, you're going to eat dairy because that's a protein and a fat. You're going to eat moderate protein, so maybe depending on if you're a man, male or female, maybe 4 servings of protein a day, which is about a palm-sized portion of like chicken or beef. And for men, maybe 6 to 7 per day portions. And then the carbs that you're getting are only coming from high fiber vegetables like broccoli, lettuce, spinach, etc. Like those high fiber vegetables, not sweet potatoes. That's a low fiber, high carb vegetable. Okay. Now, if you are counting macros, which is what I prefer because it's far more accurate and you can really get a good understanding of what you're actually eating when you either measure, weigh foods, and track it in something like MyFitnessPal or my macros, is to set it up like this. So if you use percentages, usually I don't do percentages a whole lot because when I'm manipulating macros for people, percentages get a little wonky. But if you want to use percentages, usually it's about 5% of your calories coming from carbohydrates, 25% coming from protein, and 70% coming from fat. So I usually set up always 70% of your calories are coming from fat, and then I'll play with the protein and carbs when I set it up. So for example, if you were a person, you were 5'6", you were 130 pounds, moderate muscle mass, whatever, say you're eating 2,800 calories, this is how I would set it up for an example. So here I have just a little example. 5% of your calories coming from carbs would be 35 carbs, which would be about 140 calories. 25% of your calories coming from protein would equal about 175 grams of protein per day. And then 70% of your calories coming from fat would equal 215 grams of fat per day. And that's a lot of fat. That's a lot of nuts. It's a lot of avocados. It's a lot of Kerrygold butter and olive oil, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're getting in enough fat. Now, a lot of times where people go wrong is they're trying to keep their, here, let me set this back up. They're trying to keep their protein really high, their carbs really low, and their fat is still moderate or even low. And you cannot get into a ketogenic state if you're not eating enough fat. So you have to get in enough fat. That's the biggest important part. A lot of times with people, sometimes initially when I'm trying to get them into the ketogenic state, I'll set their protein even lower. So on that example, the 25% of calories coming from protein at 2,800 calories worked out to be 175 grams of protein. Sometimes I'll lower that down to 130 or maybe even 100 just to get in more fat and get them into ketosis, hopefully a little bit faster. But generally those percentages are pretty good. Otherwise, you can set it up where your protein is about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or a little less. Especially if you're lifting, you want to keep it around there so you have enough amino acids floating around your system to build that muscle while you're on a ketogenic diet. And then setting your fat high and keeping those carbs as low as possible. The lower your carbs are, the faster you'll get into a ketogenic state. But you also need to be getting in enough fiber. Generally, I usually suggest maybe 25 to 30 grams for women and maybe 45 to 50 grams of fiber per day for men. So if you can get that in from your high fiber veggies, which would equate to about that many carbohydrates or so, between 30 and 50 carbs a day, it'll work out pretty well. So that's how you'll set it up. Again, any lower fat, you're just not going to get into a ketogenic state. You're going to be in that horrible keto flu limbo for a long time, and we're going to talk about how to cope with that too. As far as a keto food list, I kind of have a little one here as an example. I'll take my camera back off its little stand. But this is just kind of a little list. I generally... Oh, my computer is malfunctioning. Oh, that's weird. Good Lord. I generally have sort of a list compiled on Google shared spreadsheets for my clients to help with food planning. So this is kind of a food list just for this little Q&A to give you an example of things that you would avoid. So you're not going to be eating grains, sugar, fruit, any of those kind of high carbohydrate veggies like potatoes and yams. But things you will be eating are fatty meats. Salmon is great, mackerel, beef, lamb. You can obviously eat chicken in there, eggs, etc. Low carb veggies like spinach, kale, broccoli. High fat dairy, any dairy really. Dairy is protein and a fat. And then a lot of nuts and seeds, a lot of avocados. You can use those artificial sweeteners like stevia and erythritol there, but they still need to be used sparingly. That's where I have clients go wrong when they are doing a keto diet. So let me talk a little bit about that. And I'll give you an example. So I had a client, we're doing ketogenic diet, and she found these like keto chips or whatever they were. Ate them up. Because it said keto, she thought, oh great, I'll be safe. Well, no, it actually had a bunch of carbs in it from the artificial sweeteners, which put her over. And those are a lot of things you have to look out for, especially when you're trying to get into a ketogenic state. It can take you 4 to 6 weeks to get into a ketogenic state. If you've never done a ketogenic diet before, it actually takes you longer to get into ketosis. If you do a ketogenic diet 3 months every single year, you will actually be able to get into it faster as the years go on. So you have to watch out for those hidden foods. If you're going to buy processed keto foods, you need to look at the macros and you need to look at the ingredients. And erythritol erythritol and maltitol and all those sugar alcohols can be a little tricky because if you do eat too much of them, there's many of you that know you may be very uncomfortable digestively for like 24 hours and painfully gassy, etc. It's no fun. I've been there. If I eat too many Quest bars, like no good, okay? I try to avoid erythritol just because it doesn't sit well with me anyway, but a little bit here and there, not a big deal, but too much, you just got to avoid. So people do go wrong there thinking that keto foods are safe. Well, no, you're getting in all this other junk that you need to, keto processed foods. Let me clarify that. Processed keto foods can have a lot of those sugar alcohols in there. And if that's what you're eating all day long, because they taste yummy, you're going to end up eating too many carbohydrates. You have to watch out for those things. Okay, so let's move on to the Keto Flu here. So let me switch my sheet so I can show you some examples on here. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Keto Flu, and that is that period of transition between the time that you are depleted of your glycogen stores in your muscle and liver, that's your carbohydrate stores. So you're depleted of those, but your body has not switched over to using fat, turning it into ketones. So now that your brain can use that energy as in the form of ketones. And you can feel brain foggy, low energy, even a little depressed, just kind of like you have the flu almost. Some people ride it out better than others. And some people, you can get into ketosis in 3 days, and others, it'll take you 6 weeks to get into it. And you just have to suck it up and stick it out. So some things that will happen when you are in that transition period is you're going to urinate frequently because your body's dumping a lot of glycogen into the system and processing that out. So you need to be hydrated. You need to stay hydrated in that transition. And you also need to increase your salt. So you're going to feel fatigue and dizziness. And I generally have my clients like salt their food or even take some Redmond's real salt or Himalayan sea salt and throw a half a teaspoon in some water and sip on that. But you need to increase your salt intake throughout the day. You'll probably get headaches, and that's from sodium loss, and that's where increasing your salt intake in a day is going to be really important. Sometimes those headaches don't get better, so I like my clients to let me know that, and we can make some adjustments or figure out what's happening just with lifestyle-wise, with stress and sleep, etc. I might recommend some sleep supplements or some supplements to help with stress. I covered a whole bunch of supplements in another one of these Q&As. If you look on my Instagram, Get Fit Go Figure, go to the IGTV and you'll see all those videos there. Go through the supplements, and I do mention a lot of supplements for stress response, like ashwagandha and rhodiola. They're really good. But those may help through this system as well. I'm new to keto. Hi, Amanda. How are you? Because your body is processing. All right, so the question is here, why do you need the added salt? So as your body is dumping all this glycogen and processing it out, utilizing it, it actually depletes you of those minerals. And so you need to stay hydrated, and you need to keep that sodium up higher. Otherwise, it starts causing those headaches. And that's really important because you're processing all those carbohydrates out. And now that you have no carbohydrates and you have not processed fat into ketones, which are salts. Ketones are salts. You need to replace that salt in the interim, okay? So getting in enough of that salt is going to be really important. You could be constipated. So a lot of times if we go cold turkey from a regular balanced diet to ketogenic diet right away, your gut might just freak out a little bit and be constipated because now your gut bugs have to adapt to a different ratio of foods, and that's important. So sometimes you could gradually go into a ketogenic diet. If you do go cold turkey and go right into ketogenic diet, which many people like to do, constipation might be an issue. So making sure you're getting in enough magnesium is going to be really important too. I usually recommend high doses of magnesium. A lot of people are pretty deficient. So different forms of magnesium, magnesium glycinate, magnesium citrate will tend to pull more water into the intestinal tract to help keep you regular. But getting enough magnesium, again, with the mineral depletion is important, and then it can also help keep you more regular. So magnesium citrate, and you can dose that up until you have loose stools. And I've had clients dose up really, really high, like 2,000 milligrams or more, until they actually see some movement, and then we stay there for a while and pull it back. But 800 is kind of a nice range to go. Again, I'm not a doctor, party people, so my disclaimer is to check with your doctor before you start supplements or any new diet, just so you know. That's really important. So yeah, so those are some supplements that can help with that sort of keto flu, and sometimes you just got to push through it. So salt, super important. Magnesium, super important. If you're lifting and really active, I highly suggest getting exogenous ketones. They are ketone salts in the form of a powder. You're supplementing with them so that your body has ketones to run off of while it's in the process of transitioning over. And those can do wonders for your energy levels in that interim when you're lifting, if you're mountain biking, if you're, I don't know, a marathon runner. Keto might actually be really good for you anyway, for that long distance fat burning. But get some exogenous ketones. And I really like, what brand is it? It's in my cabinet. I'm gonna run and go get it real fast. The reason I like it is it doesn't have artificial sweeteners in it. Okay, here we go. So, I might also add that exogenous ketones are beta-hydroxybutyrate, so that's what you're going to see, BHB. Let's hope this light isn't too bright. Let me turn off my monitor. This is Fit Factor. I bought these at the vitamin shop. I really like these, but see, you see BHB. These are exogenous ketones. Beta-hydroxybutyrate is that ingredient that you'll see on there. But I really like these because it didn't have any artificial sweeteners like asulfame, potassium, or sucralose, or aspartame. Those are gross. They're in a lot of supplements. I would avoid them at all costs. So these are really nice exogenous ketones. I like them. They are very salty because they are salts, ketone salts. Pruvit, Pruvit, I used to take a long time ago. I did like the orange flavor. Chocolate was kind of gross to me, but it might have a strange flavor. You'll get used to it, or you can mix it with some branched chain amino acids you really like, or get some unflavored ketone salts to utilize to mix with maybe some BCAAs or whatever. But those I found to be very effective to help you have the energy for your workouts when you're going through that transition, and then continuing on with those exogenous ketones as well. Some other things to consider before bed: taking some 5-HTP. Low carb diets can actually affect your serotonin levels, and 5-HTP is the precursor to serotonin, which affects the second half of sleep. And serotonin is like your happy hormone. So that's where you can kind of feel depressed when you are in that interim phase, in that keto flu stage, because it's affecting your serotonin levels. Low carb diets do. So take some 5-HTP, and that can help as well. Some other things that I like to utilize: glucose disposing agents, GDA. A glucose disposing agent will help drive glucose out of the bloodstream into the muscle and liver so that your blood glucose levels stay low. Slintrol, Slintrol, by, I believe it's New Ethics, or New Ethics, the guy that owns that company, he has Natty Nutrition. Slintrol is still sold through Natty Nutrition, I believe, and last I checked. And that is a combination of vanadyl sulfate and chromium polynicotinate. Now, I buy those separately, and I'll usually dose about 200 to 400 micrograms of chromium polynicotinate and then 10 to 20 milligrams of vanadyl sulfate. And they're usually in the blood sugar control aisle or diabetic aisle. But when I first have clients get on their keto diet, I like them to take this at night for maybe 3 to 5 nights. I don't ever want them to take it before a workout ever. I don't want, because blood sugar levels could just get way too low. And then I will have them use this on any high carb days we put in. I might have them take a dose, one with each, like 3 meals, not 4 or 5, but maybe 1 dose, which with each of the 3 meals, just to kind of help drive that glucose into the cells and keep those blood sugar levels low so you can get back into ketosis faster. So once you get into ketogenic state and you eat carbohydrates, it'll kick you back out. But because you're depleted, you will get back into it within a few days, and sometimes that transition's hard again. But a glucose disposing agent can help speed up that process. So you can fill up glycogen stores and then get back into ketogenic state a little bit faster. But I like to use those GDAs when we're first getting into a ketogenic state. I'll have them do it at night for maybe 3 to 5 nights. And then I usually don't like to do it long term. But then again, just on those refeed days. So those can help you get into a ketogenic state. And there are keto strips you can get at the drugstore. They're not that accurate. Sometimes they help. Maybe they give you peace of mind. You can also get glucose meters that you blow into. So it's measuring the ketones coming off your breath. You might get like when you sweat, or your breath may be more coppery smelling. So your partner may notice that about you when you're on a ketogenic, or when you're actually in a ketogenic state. You might start smelling differently. It's not bad, it's just different. So your breath or like your armpit sweat might smell a little differently, but fine. That's just another indicator that you've gotten into ketosis. And I have this document that I send my clients, and I'm going to link it actually in the notes, because there's some other things on here for keto recipes and some resources, but it's some really nice directions. As far as keto recipes, a lot of times I'll make like a cauliflower and ham au gratin, which is super yummy. I use cauliflower a lot when I'm on a ketogenic diet. Cauliflower curry, a lot of stir-fry veggies, but you have to be careful of stir-fry sauces. They can be very sugary, keto chili, etc. Let me see what some of my other questions were. Oh yeah, okay. And then let's hit when to use it and for how long. So I'm not a fan of a ketogenic diet long-term. I'm just not. I've only seen with myself and my clients that performance decreases over time. I think 3 months is a really nice kind of average to utilize to either kickstart fat loss, or what I actually use it for more often than not. It's pretty much the only time I ever really use it. There's 2 times actually I use it. One, the reason I use it the most is when I feel like a client is insulin resistant. And a lot of times when someone is overweight, or they're not responding to a diet at all, and if hormones are in a good spot, for the most part, a lot of times if cortisol's off or there's other hormones off, it will affect your insulin, which causes that insulin resistance. So insulin will take your glucose out of this bloodstream into your cells. That's its job. When it's not working, the glucose circulates in your system, and we need to fix that. So studies have shown that a ketogenic diet can actually decrease insulin resistance by 30% within 2 weeks, which is awesome. So I've seen some nice success with clients when I put them on a ketogenic diet, just to help with that insulin issue and to sort of balance hormones out a little bit. And we'll stay there for maybe 3 to 4 months as long as they feel really good and things are working well. But again, performance starts decreasing, I feel like, so we'll transition back onto a balanced diet, or even a little bit higher fat but balanced diet. So that's one reason I use it. And then the second time I use it is if I have clients in prep and they're towards the end and we need help leaning out, I will utilize a ketogenic diet. I don't do it very often, but if it is the correct circumstance, I will use it for clients. Because again, hormones are effed up when you're in prep. That does affect your insulin, and sometimes a ketogenic diet can be just the ticket to help really deplete, get fat loss going, and get them really lean. But otherwise, again, I don't like using it long term. It's a really nice Kickstarter. Sometimes if people are having trouble or they just need some rules. And I have clients that really like being on a higher fat or ketogenic diet for a little while because it gives them rules, because they can't eat bread or pasta and they're not trying to fit it into their macros, and then they go ahead and overeat it. So it's a nice way to set those boundaries for things that tend to make you fat, right? Or eating too much sugar, etc. And is not healthy for you. It causes a lot of inflammation. I feel like grains for a lot of people cause a lot of inflammation as well, aside from sugar. A lot of our modern grains are very GMO'd, and our bodies, on the very atomic level, don't know what to do with that shit. So, so that's my spiel. But if there is no more questions, that little rant there covered a lot of questions that I get from clients or clients that I had asking these questions for this Q&A. So if there's no more questions, that's what I got for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to link some resources in the comments below this video like usual, and I'll also post this on Instagram and YouTube, so it will be there. So thank you for watching, you guys. Have a great night.